This is a new episode of Conversations with Rob. If you like these videos, please subscribe, like the videos, and comment on the videos. We like any input, so please subscribe, like, or comment. Smash the like button, and also smash the subscription button. Gentlemen, we are here for another Conversations with Rob. We got a special guy that I'm very fond of. I believe he's an American treasure. Governor Lincoln Chafee, but also senator. So a little bio he was the mayor of Warwick. Then he was the senator from he was the mayor of Warwick from 1993 to 1999. Then U.S. senator from 1999 through 2007. Then he was the Rhode Island governor from 2011 to 2015, and then ran for president in 2016. So, Governor, first of all, before you even talk, I want to say that, I want to commend you for your judgment to stand up and vote against President Bush, who I think was one of the worst presidents in my lifetime for sure, and be the only Republican vote against the war in Iraq in the Senate. And that really took a lot of coverage. So thank you, Governor, for doing that.
Yes, I was mad at President Bush because he ran on being a uniter, not a divider. That's what he said as a candidate over and over again. And he said he'd address climate change, and he said we'd have a humble foreign policy. And when he got into office, all that was not true, and he did the exact opposite. So I felt very justified in voting against many of his initiatives because he ran as a candidate on things that I did believe in.
Right. Yeah. So it was a big change when he got to office, and I believe we were making a lot of progress as far as the peace process in the Middle East. And then once Iraq happened, as you know, being in the Senate, that really opened up a huge quagmire because Iraq and Iran were against each other. Then we went in and blew Iraq up, and now we have problems not only in Iraq but Syria, all over the Middle East now with Iran, with the ship where they had that incident. So it's really opened up a big quagmire in the whole Middle East.
Yes, after the breakup of the Soviet Union and the fall of the Berlin Wall, we had a great opportunity to lead the world responsibly. The United States was looked to as a world leader, and after 9/11 and with Bush and Cheney and all those neocons, I don't think we led well. In fact, the Iraq War was built on false premises that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. He was nowhere close to having anything of mass destruction capability. And just as you said, now we see chaos from Afghanistan through Yemen, through Iran, through North Africa, largely because we failed to lead responsibly as we should have. All the world looks to us as Americans, to the United States of America, to lead responsibly. And now we just have repair work to be done. I don't think Donald Trump's doing a very good job on that repair work, to be honest.
I agree. I think he's made it worse, especially getting out of that Iran deal, and that was a big thing where he got out of. So you ran for president in 2016, and you were on the Foreign Relations Committee as in the Senate. While in the Senate, so what do you, we kind of just touched on this a little bit, but what is our biggest geopolitical foe? You look at MSNBC, and I've seen you on RT, you've talked on RT before, and I've watched you on there, but you see on these stations like MSNBC, ABC, whatever it may be, they say Russia's our biggest geopolitical foe, and that was what Governor Romney was saying in 2012 in the debate against President Obama. Do you really believe that Russia is our biggest geopolitical foe, especially with China, and now with President Trump, pounding the drums for war in Iran?
No, I don't think Russia's our biggest geopolitical foe. Don't forget, most of the population of Russia is in Europe. All that western part of Russia, west of the Urals, is Europe. And they do a lot of business with Europe. Centuries of European influence on most of Russia. And I think the rise of China, the other countries that are rising up, Brazil, India, we all have to as Americans, make better alliances with these countries, all of them. And we've kind of gotten away from diplomacy, and our arrogance, unfortunately, has alienated a lot of countries that I think want to be friendly with us. And we're going to need help around the world, in Iran, and getting them on a peaceful path. which I'm sure they want to do, provide health care, education, jobs for their citizens. That's what most governments want. They don't want conflict with other countries. So we still have a chance to do a better job geopolitically.
So to dive more into foreign policy, we hear, and we kind of just touched on this a little bit with the Russian collusion thing with the Trump campaign. Now we see Robert Mueller's going to come out and testify in front of Congress. That's coming up pretty soon. I've read this book, Shattered, and I'm sure you read it too.
Yep.
24 hours before the Clinton concession speech was, and it wasn't even, she didn't even concede. They're engineering a case that's saying, let's blame Russia because she lost the election. So, I mean, and then you look at the Urane One deal that the Clinton Foundation was involved in. I mean, what do you think about this Russian collusion narrative? I feel like it really is drummed up by the Clinton campaign. Russia did have some Facebook accounts, but hey, Hillary, go and campaign in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Ohio instead of running around to Arizona or wherever she wants to do all her fundraisers. I mean, come on. I mean, what do you think about this whole Russian collusion narrative?
Well, I did take a picture of that page from the book Shattered that you just referenced. I took a picture of that and I saved it because that's exactly what you said. Before even her concession speech, they're trying to spin their defeat and blame it on the Russians. They all gathered in the hotel room, and it's there in the book. And they said, we're going to try and spin this. It's not our fault. It's the Russians' fault. But amazing to me is that so-called respected media sources, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, they all bought into it. And for 2 years, they pumped it at Americans that it's the Russians' fault. And I challenged them to find 2 people in Wisconsin that will raise their hand and say, the Russians made me vote for Trump. Yeah, sure, of course they're active on the internet. The internet's just a sewer. Everybody knows that. A lot goes on the internet. But I don't think the people in Wisconsin that voted for Trump were heavily influenced by Russian. Yes, they were meddling, but did they influence the Russians? I don't believe so. I'll be curious to see what Mueller says in his testimony.
Governor, and you in the Senate, you've seen this. Every administration has went into other elections. We've went into Israel's went into our elections. All these other countries, we've went into other elections in the Ukraine and stuff like that. I mean, come on. So how can we go and stand up and say Russia's meddling when they make a couple of Facebook accounts, and we are meddling in all these different other countries' elections? Venezuela. I mean, come on. It's just a farce. It's a joke. But
yes, even worse, Robert, more than meddling. I mean, what we did to Salvador Allende in Chile. I mean, there was a coup and assassination of a country's elected leader, and the CIA was involved in that. So even worse than meddling.
Yeah, we killed a democratically elected person, and what they're doing in Venezuela is crazy too. I mean, whether you like him or not, he was elected by the people, and then they're trying to put this puppet in that was educated in American universities into power. So it's disgraceful what's going on, and it seems like nobody's really standing up besides people that are on Russian TV are talking about it. And I mean, I know it's based out of the U.S. and they have people on there that are politicians from the U.S., but that MSNBC isn't saying this stuff about Venezuela and what you just said about Chile. ABC isn't saying it. NBC. So I mean, it's a joke. It's crazy that a Russian TV station.
I wish that we had spent a fraction of the tens of millions of dollars we spent on the Mueller investigation and the amount of time and the amount of media scrutiny on what went wrong in Iraq and how we got into Iraq and why there were no weapons of mass destruction and what happened. That's a $6 trillion mistake, 4,000 dead Americans, many more affected by post-traumatic stress disorder. And you can't even talk about it. I tried to talk about it in my run for president, and they tried to marginalize me with metric nonsense.
Well,
I want to talk about American leadership in the world, not about metric. And but the mass media, they have their own agenda.
Well, President Bush is on Ellen, and he's dancing with Ellen now. He's a hero to the Democratic Party now. When he was killed over 3,000 Americans in Iraq, and more than that, He's, people have gotten their legs blown off. How many Iraqis have died, in the hundreds of thousands, and nobody says a word anymore. As you said, you try to talk about it in a presidential run, and people just want to talk about silliness and foolishness.
Yes, it's kind of sad for America, and Condoleezza Rice and all these other people that pushed us into that war. They're touted as heroes. It's sad about America what we're going through.
So, Governor, just one more question about 2016. I do want to dive into 2020, and then I want to get into your political history. Why do you think Hillary lost? And we kind of touched on this already. She didn't go to Wisconsin. She didn't, go to Ohio. She didn't go to Pennsylvania, Michigan. And also my thing, and I would love to hear what you think, is the speeches. The speeches to Wall Street, all the stuff came out in WikiLeaks. We knew this already. Bernie talked about he didn't care about the speeches, but maybe if he hit her harder on that, people, he might have won that nomination.
Yes, in the book, The Shattered, they talk about her liabilities that she never really understood were liabilities, those high-paid speeches to Wall Street. And people were just asking, tell us what you told them. What did you say for your $750,000 for an hour speech? And also the emails and the Clinton Foundation. Those were the big three things that were her big liabilities. The book Shattered talked about, and they were with the campaign every day. Those two reporters that wrote the book, every day with the campaign. And they said Secretary Clinton was just so arrogant, she couldn't understand that these were liabilities and needed to be addressed. In the end, the American people said, no, we prefer Donald Trump to you.
Right. Well, the thing is, and not even just Hillary Clinton, how the Democratic Party doesn't learn from their mistakes. Now we see Joe Biden going out and doing tons of Wall Street fundraisers. I mean, how have we not learned from our mistakes of 2016? That Trump is going to go out there and say, Joe Biden's middle-class Joe, but he's out making speeches for Wall Street. Hillary and Joe is Hillary 2.0. Kamala Harris is for the people, and she's going out and meeting with Citibank and doing fundraisers with them. I mean, how have we not learned as the Democratic Party the mistakes from 2016?
Well, I was happy to leave the Democratic Party when I moved to Wyoming. I didn't register as a Democrat just for the reasons you just talked about, that they don't learn from their mistakes. And I believe that the Democratic Party, whenever they nominate someone that voted for the Iraq War, they lose. John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, and now if they nominate Joe Biden, he voted for the Iraq War. It's going to be a huge liability. It's still there with the American people, even all these years ago. Especially with vets that went over there believing that we had a just cause. And when it turned out there were no WMD, those poor vets felt betrayed.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So I have two questions on 2020, then I want to dive into your history. So 2020 is taken off, as you know, the top tier with Bernie, Biden, Elizabeth Warren, and Kamala Harris. You ran against Bernie, you know Joe Biden. We just kind of touched on Joe a little bit. Who do you believe is the favorite? I mean, Bernie, in my aspect, and I'm a big Bernie guy, I believe he's still the favorite, and because he raised $18 million this last quarter, but they were all individual donations of $19 or less. So he's raising 450,000 donors, and they're all given small amounts. This is by the people, not the corporations. What do you think about this top tier, Governor?
Well, you do reference the top tier, and I think it's unfortunate, and I went through it. The media, they pick who they want to be top tier. So right. We never hear from Hickenlooper. We never hear from Inslee, two governors who I respect a great deal. I overlapped with both of them as governor of Rhode Island, and I know them both. And Inslee has been a member of Congress. He was a congressman from Washington. So he's got broad experience, but you never hear from these good people with good resumes. Instead, we hear about Mayor Pete from some two-bit city in Indiana, or Beto from a failed campaign for Senate.
Identity politics, Governor, identity politics.
Yeah, so as the top tier, you never hear from Tulsi Gabbard. And she's got a woman that's a vet and anti-war. They've been marginalized. So I find that unfortunate. I did go through it as a candidate back in 2016. The media is going to pick who they're going to get behind and give them front seats at the debates and all that type of questions and coverage. And that's what you look for as a candidate. I've been in politics for 30 years. You need some media-free exposure. And once they're against you, it's an uphill fight.
Well, I do like Tulsi Gabbard. I'm glad you mentioned her name. But with Tulsi Gabbard, I think the media doesn't want her because she's going to disrupt the military-industrial complex, and they're all in bed with that complex. So why would they want somebody like her? I'm saying if Bernie was smart and Bernie did get in, I think he puts her as defense secretary, and she would really, I feel like, do a good job as an American patriot herself, being as a veteran. And also, she's not on that wavelength about Russia, as we talked about earlier in the interview. She's met with Bashar al-Assad. She's a guy that's willing to meet with these dictators and talk about, how we can create peace and how we can kind of come together as a world. So I think that she would be a great candidate.
Yes, I agree with you. And she had some guts back when she was on the Democratic vice president of the Democratic National Committee, and she saw how the DNC and the Clinton campaign were so embedded with each other, and she switched her allegiance over to Bernie Sanders, saying this is not right. As the vice president, I remember that was a big deal because I was involved, of course, back then in the 2016 campaign. Tulsi Gabbard made a name for herself back then, having the guts to say this isn't right. The DNC should be neutral and promote the best candidate. And sure, Hillary's got the money and all the organization and everything, but at least let's try and be neutral. But as Donna Brazil knows full well, it was a rancid connection between the Clinton campaign and the DNC.
Well, it's almost like the questions I'm going to ask next, because I was just going to hit into that topic as the last question for 2020. So we saw the Unity Commission happen after what you just talked about with the DNC cheating Bernie out of a lot of primaries. So do you feel like those fixes with the superdelegates on the second ballot have helped out? So Bernie maybe has a chance, and not just Bernie, other candidates, I should say, have a chance besides, the top tier as we talked about. Because now, Governor, we hear about the virtual caucuses in Iowa, in Nevada, and it's, they're trying to make it more accessible for people that have disabilities, which, I'm all for 100%. But there's no paper trail. They want you to vote by app. So anything online or anything without a paper trail, we know that they can manipulate these numbers and stuff like that. So what do you think about this virtual caucus thing in Nevada and Iowa now? And do you think that the reforms made any kind of chance? Change, rather.
No, just like you're alluding to, it's still rigged. And the establishment wants who they're going to, with the media and everybody getting behind, and the establishment, it's going to be so hard for an outsider. But don't forget, Donald Trump did it as a Republican. He was the outsider. And so despite it being rigged, it's still possible for a Democratic outsider to buck the system. But
now we got, to go with what you're saying about those different rules in the Republican primary nominating process and the Democrat. They don't have the super delegates like the Democrats do. Now, I know the Democrats got rid of them the first round, but who knows, with 25 million candidates, Governor, now, there's going to be probably
on the first ballot.
Yeah, it's not going to be a first ballot. There's probably going to be a second or a third ballot. And I feel like almost like they wanted that to happen, and maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, but how is it that when you ran, there was only, 4, 5, 6 candidates, and now this time around against Donald Trump, there's like 26, 28 candidates in the race? I mean, it's a little fishy that all of a sudden all these people are jumping into the race. Now Tom Steyer just jumped in. I mean, it's crazy that it's almost like that it's the Democratic Party wants all these people to come in, so they'll break up the progressives, such as Bernie, such as Warren, such as Tulsi Gabbard, so they cut down the vote, and then they get to pick whoever they want. Yes, and they want it to go past the first ballot with all these candidates, divide it up enough so that nobody has enough on the first ballot to win, and then they get their super delegates, and then they control the process. Right, I totally agree with you, Governor. I mean, a quick side note, if we look at what happened in 2016 in Rhode Island with Governor Raimondo shutting down half of the polling places in the Democratic primary for Rhode Island. so she could try to get Hillary Clinton in, who is her best buddy, best friends forever. And then Bernie Sanders ended up winning that primary pretty big. So that was a pretty big say.
He won 37 of our 39 cities and towns. And then when they went to the convention, all the super delegates voted for Clinton. It was 19-13 for Clinton, despite Bernie sweeping Rhode Island.
And then they wonder why Hillary Clinton lost the election.
Yes.
Because you have all the electors that are voting against what the people wanted in their states and cities and towns. So.
Yeah, not right.
So what do you feel like why, this is to dive into your life, what do you think that your presidential campaign never took off? I mean, like we talked about, you're a big foreign policy wonk, and in a time of after 9/11, that's something that we need. You talked about the metric during your campaign. The whole world is metric besides the United States of America. So why not get with the rest of the world, as you said? So why do you feel like that didn't take off? A man that's been a governor, a U.S. senator, that's been a mayor of a town, and no activity.
Yes, that's a good resume. There aren't too many that have served at a local level as a councilman and a mayor, at the federal level as a United States senator, and at the state level as a governor. There's not too many Americans that have that resume. And I just think the establishment wanted Clinton, and they saw me as a threat because of my good resume and my high ethical standards. In 30 years of public service, I've never had a scandal. Right. I'm a good public servant, and I think the establishment was scared of me, and they would not cover me. And they did even more than that. Rather than not even cover me, whenever any kind of coverage occurred, it was negative and mocking, and we talk about the metric. I said the metric thing is a little sideline as a symbol of how we reintegrate with the rest of the world.
Right.
And restore our credibility after the Iraq lies. And so metric's a good way of saying to the rest of the world, we're going to join you in how you do measurements. Instead, they turned it into this big joke on TV and the late night, Jimmy Kimmel and all that stuff. Yeah, rather than talking about the substantive issues that I wanted to talk about, how we restore American credibility. And so I think I kind of take it as a badge of honor that I got some little coverage that they were scared of me. They don't want me on the stage. They don't want me having, at the debate, I got 8 minutes out of 2 hours. The less of anybody on that stage, less than O'Malley, less than Webb, obviously less than Sanders and Clinton.
Right.
8 minutes, sitting there for 20 minutes at a time. I said, they're scared of me. They don't want me talking about my ideas for America.
Well, now it's even worse, Governor. They just shut the microphones off now.
Yes. Now it's obvious. They're not even... one funny thing that happened in that campaign for president, I made my announcement for president. I looked at the New York Times the next day, and I go through it thinking, now there's not too many people challenging Hillary Clinton. It's not like there's 20 people like there are now. Nobody's doing it. And I go through the Times, I'm looking, I can't find anything, so I go through it again. I'm saying, it's got to be a little blurb, something tiny little 2 sentences or something. Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. Not one word about a former mayor, former governor, former senator, with high ethical standards, putting forward good ideas for America, running for president. Nothing. So that's what it was like.
It's disgraceful. And like I said, and I'll say it again too, you are an American patriot and a national treasure, because not only what you've done in the Senate, but voting against the Iraq war is big on my list. And that was one of the worst foreign policy mistakes in our country and its history. So
Absolutely.
I really commend you for that. So let's talk. So your dad passed away. What made you run for a seat for the U.S. Senate?
I was really one of the top elected Republicans at that time.
Right.
Yes, Governor Almond was in office. Really, as mayor of Warwick, the second largest city in Rhode Island, and so it was a natural. If my dad was not going to seek another term, that I would be the top Republican candidate, just by virtue of my experience as mayor and the paucity of other Republicans in Rhode Island.
Right.
So I started raising money and running for office with my dad's help, and then he had his heart attack and died, sadly, of course. And then I served that appointed term, and then I continued my campaign, which I had started when he was alive.
Right. So now your dad was a real distinguished senator from Rhode Island before he passed. Now, what would you think he would think of this Republican Party with Trump and all the racist stuff? And anti-immigrant, anti-black, pretty much anything that your dad really stood for as a senator. What would your dad think about this Republican Party?
Yes, even before he died, he saw the party changing in the 90s. The Southerners started to take more control of the party. In fact, he lost his leadership position in the Senate. He was the conference chair, which is a highly sought and prestigious position in the party in the Senate. And they were in the majority, and he was conference chair. And a Southerner beat him. Thad Cochran from Mississippi ran against him and knocked him off by 1 vote. So he saw the party changing more. He was pro-choice. The party wanted to be pro-life. And on these social issues that some of the New England Republicans, Oregon Republicans across the country didn't want to get into the social issues. Let's just balance the books, let people live their lives, gays and immigrants and others live their lives as they see best and make their own choices, and we'll be fiscally responsible. Republicans got away from that. Deficits came roaring back. Right. And so he saw the party changing before he died. And now, completely changed. There's no room for moderates, so-called moderates in the party.
So I know that you touched on, you just changed the Libertarian as movement to Wyoming, and you kind of touched on that a little bit earlier on in the interview. Is that what made you change, just because the Democratic Party, they're going to probably nominate somebody that is a corporatist or a pro-war manga person to lead the party? Is that why you changed?
Yeah, I do have a feeling there is a time in American history when they're going to get finally fatigued of this two-party system. And it did happen when the Whigs went away and Republicans came in. So it has happened in the past. And I just have a feeling that it could come back. And I was looking for another party, whether it's the Greens or Libertarians. And I went on the website, the Libertarian website, and went through all their statement of principles and what they stand for. And I'm saying, I agree with that. I agree with that. No deficits. Let gay people get married if they want to get married. The immigration policy is going to be better. I'm in favor of no capital punishment. Join the rest of the civilized world. No torture of prisoners per the Geneva Convention. Yes, Fourth Amendment. You need a warrant to tap our phones. And the more I read, and of course, anti-war was the big one for me. I'm saying, that's my party. And I pressed down to the Board of Canvassers in Jackson, Wyoming, Teton County, and registered as a Libertarian.
So in the last question, before we dive into Rhode Island, as you just kind of brought up torturing prisoners, this person's not a prisoner, but they were an American soldier. Chelsea Manning is being kept right now. She was released, and now she's back in custody. Now we see Julian Assange. If he gets put back into the U.S., brought to the U.S. rather, from England, he's probably might be, either in prison for life or executed. What do you, as a person that was been in the foreign policy realm and on the Foreign Relations Committee, what do you think about Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange, the situation right now?
And added Edward Snowden. And
Snowden too, correct.
And libertarians, Snowden's a hero to libertarians. He exposed government illegal activity. And now he's hiding in the embassy in Moscow. It's un-American. He should be a hero.
Right.
What we were doing was illegal. And Chelsea Manning and some of these other issues, and Julian Assange, we should be standing up for First Amendment, freedom of speech, and the Fourth Amendment. You need a warrant to tap our phones. And so some of these, the libertarians have a much more enlightened view of and a fierce pride in our amendment rights, our Bill of Rights, and our constitutional rights.
Right.
See how the libertarians do.
Well, that's great, Senator. So I want to move into Rhode Island, and like I said, you were governor of Rhode Island. Now, what do you think of the job that Governor Raimondo is doing? She did get reelected. I feel like if they put up Fung actually fought against Raimondo. He kept saying he was with Trump. And I mean, as you know, as a person that ran as a Republican in Rhode Island, you can't win saying you're with Trump in Rhode Island. He didn't stick up for anything. He just kind of went with the party. So I think that, if Rhode Island really had a better Republican party there with some decent candidates, they probably would knock out people like Raimondo and some of these clowns in the state house and the state in the Senate. What do you think about Gina?
Well, I think the Rhode Island electoral process was all done in the back rooms. And the first thing was Matt Brown challenged Gina in a primary. And the backroom people made sure there was a third candidate named Spencer Dickinson that peeled off votes from Matt Brown. So that gave Gina the primary win. Of course, she had the money too, and Matt Brown couldn't raise 2 cents. The establishment made sure of that. And then going into the general, don't forget Fung had a primary with Patricia Morgan. Right.
In Trillo.
And then Trillo runs as an independent in the general, just as Spencer Dickinson got in. And it muddied the waters, and it ensured that Gina Raimondo would get reelected. So I believe that everything was done in the back rooms, made sure Spencer Dickinson was in the primary, made sure Joe Trillo ran as an independent, a Trump independent, to peel off votes from Fung, and Gina's back in. And unfortunately, Rhode Island's in chaos. DCYF is chaos. And when I was there, no children died in DCYF custody. We didn't have any deaths in 4 years. It seems like, what are there, 14 children have died in
at least
DCYF. And there's so many things going wrong. The terrible ranking that we just got. So there's not going. I think when I left, we were going in the right direction. We had the biggest drop of unemployment of any state except Nevada over my 4 budgets. We were going in the right direction. All the data supports that. And then we had some success with passing gay marriage and getting the money back for 38 studios, got $60 million back for 38 studios. So we're going in the right direction. That is now reversed. Seems like we're sliding back in all the corporate giveaways to General Electric with taxpayer money, and now to the lottery giant taking what is a $1 billion deal.
Right.
Made a secret deal, made to favor one company. That should be done out in the open, in my view.
So I want to talk about the pension process, and I know the pension plan. So with the Rhode Island State Pension Plan, how did the plan get so underfunded? Was it basically just the politicians were dipping into that fund to do other pet projects, or why did it get so bad for that Rhode Island pension plan?
It really was. The people are living longer, and we did need to address as people live longer. I think 1 out of 7 people live into their 90s, and that's different from 30, 40 years ago. And then disability issues, more and more people getting on disability, needed to address that. So there were some fixes that needed to be made, but my point that I was making during that whole pension reform was that the state was about 60% funded. Many of the local plans are in way worse shape. Providence, what are they in the 20% funded? In Coventry, one of their plans is 17% funded. That's the Providence pension plan is the iceberg that's sitting out there that the state of Rhode Island is headed right for. And once that pension plan blows up, the state's going to really have financial problems because it all washes up on the state's beaches when any city or town. And we had to get Central Falls back into the smallest of Rhode Island cities and towns back into financial shape, which we did under my administration. But Providence, that's a whole nother ball of wax compared to Central Falls.
So now after, Gina's, Governor Raimondo, I should say, now they're doing the truck tolls. They've just did that within the past couple of months. Now, so incoming Trumps have to pay a penalty. So that's almost like, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, that's a play against business coming into the state, Governor. So how do you feel about that now?
Yes, it's like putting a big billboard at the state line saying, we don't support business in this state. And there's your toll gantry as proof of that. And it's just for trucks. I mean, cars use the roads also. It's so anti-business. No wonder we're ranked last for business climate. If you're going to have a toll, as I propose in the Sakana Bridge, everybody uses it. Everybody contributes to the weakening of the infrastructure that needs to be maintained. And so everybody should spread it across. But just to put it on business is like putting a billboard saying, don't come to Rhode Island.
That's Rhode Island. But anyway, so we just had the sports betting thing, so hopefully that'll bring in some money to the state. What's your take on sports betting? And they also approved marijuana. So what is your take on sports betting and marijuana now?
Well, it's happening. People are betting on sports, so to bring it out and tax it and regulate, it's I think a smart move, and libertarians are for that. And also libertarians are for bringing out drug use, and it's all happening. It's all going underground in the black market and everything. So bring it out, regulate it, tax it. The libertarians do believe in that also.
Right. So now you touched on it a little bit in Rhode Island. Now they have the slot machines and the gambling initiatives with that IGT contract that you just kind of touched on. So that contract's due through 2043. Now, Twin Rivers is all upset about that, and I can see why. That's Rhode Island's going to lose millions of dollars in gambling because they're outsourcing that with the no-bid lottery deal for the IGT. So what do you think? So I know IGT is employing a lot of people in Rhode Island, but it just doesn't seem like a good deal for Rhode Island. It seems just like a more money being lost.
In my whole career as a councilman, mayor, senator, governor, I was against favoring any one company. It should be an open bidding process. Whoever has the best bid, and present it and open it up, and should win the contract. But these secret deals favoring one company, again, that's why I joined the Libertarians. They're adamant about this crony capitalism is a bad thing in the long term, and it is. You start favoring one company, the poor other companies that are there trying to compete, all of a sudden you just have monopolies, and that's not good for America.
Well, not even just that. Now they have they just approved with the firefighters with the overtime for the with mandating the cities and towns to pay overtime for over 42 hours. So it just seems like that's another thing that she just put in. She is going to sign into law, where it's just going to put the cities and towns on the hook for more money. And so, I mean, it's just constantly that there's these stupid deals in Rhode Island. I'm not against firefighters or police or anything, but I mean, over 42 hours, 42 hours, now it's going to be moved to 53 hours for the overtime. I mean, this is insane. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yes, as mayor, a third of our non-school budget was in the fire department. So it's a huge cost for municipalities, and overtime is a huge cost within the fire department. So here you have the whole fire department, one of your biggest non-school expenses, and then the overtime, just the way they work it for the manning, the minimum manning, and the ranks. The lieutenant will go out, and it has to be filled at his rank. And so the overtime is a huge cost for cities and towns. And North Kingstown tried to address it with this platoon, changing the platoon system and the overtime rules, and they were successful. They got it passed. And then the firefighters went to the State House and undid everything that North Kingstown had been able to accomplish. So it's trying to address the costs. And I'm with you. When we call 911, you want the firefighters and the ambulance to come. So I respect these hardworking people, but we have to have a good balance of the costs and the quality of the service.
Right. And one more question about Rhode Island. So I looked at Fortune magazine and I looked online. And a lot of these New England states are ranked higher than Rhode Island in living, cost of living, jobs, taxes, and education. I mean, what is your way to correct this issue besides putting new people in charge?
Well, I thought I was a good governor, Rob, and got the state going in the right direction and high ethical standards. DCFYF is always a challenge, but we were not having any deaths in the department. The economy was going in the right direction. Unemployment was going in the right direction. We had passed marriage equality. That's a good symbol for Rhode Island to attract talented people to our state. And all it took was abuse. The newspaper and the TV camera, the TV show stations, and they wouldn't say anything positive.
Well, you weren't part of the establishment.
$60 million back from the lawsuit for 38 studios. Hardly a word of praise for Chafee's lawsuit. So the establishment is a big problem in the success of Rhode Island and the failures of Rhode Island. It's a big problem. Newspapers, they're not journal anymore. They're an advocate.
Well, yeah. Well, is there any way we can correct it? Because, like, I mean, it seems like people just in Rhode Island. It's not just Rhode Island, but it's all over the country. I'm Italian, and where I'm originally from in Johnston, everybody's Italian. You got to vote for the person that's Italian. And the person's been in there for 50 years, or now that's an exaggeration, but the person's been in there 20, 30 years in the same position, and they don't really do anything. And it's the same in all towns all over Rhode Island. So it says, it's almost like if you're a Democrat in Rhode Island, and majority of Rhode Island, you're fine. But and there's no Republican, like I said, as far as anybody coming up that's going to challenge any of the Democrats coming up. It's just going to be a consistent cycle of the same old in Rhode Island. It's like, when is Rhode Island going to wake up? I mean, look at downtown Providence. I mean, it's crazy down there with the homeless problem down there. I mean, I see people all over the Rhode Island panhandling and stuff. It's insanity. I don't know how we correct the problem. Do you have any ideas off the top of your head besides, like I said, getting these people out of office?
Well, I have faith in voters ultimately to see the light, but it's tough when the establishment, the Providence Journal, the TV stations, and what they're doing and who they favor and who they advocate for. It just makes it hard for the regular voter to make good decisions, because they're just bombarded with, Trump calls it fake news, but it is.
Right.
But ultimately, the voters, they're smart, and they'll get a course correction in Rhode Island.
Well, we hope so. So the last two questions for you before I give you a couple of fun ones. So you were mayor, a U.S. senator, and a governor. Anything now that you changed party as Libertarian? Maybe another run? Maybe go and do some TV work? Anything on the horizon?
Well, I am having fun talking to some of the leaders in the Libertarian Party. And so that's fun, getting involved in a new party and learning more about what they stand for and being enthusiastic for their anti-war position, some of their good positions against capital punishment, as we talked about, Fourth Amendment rights, no torture, all good things, gay rights, immigrant rights, and a right-wing approach to finances. I'm a fiscal conservative, always have been. Like that. No, don't put our grandchildren and children into debt. So I'm having fun doing that.
All right. And what is your proudest political moment?
Well, I'm sure the Iraq War, being the only Republican, and I knew I was right when I cast that vote. I knew that Saddam Hussein was not a threat to the United States of America.
But Governor, we supported Saddam Hussein in the 80s. I mean, and now then he turned against him. And it's almost like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Saddam Hussein tried to assassinate Bush the father, and maybe the son was upset about that. I mean, I know it was more about oil and stuff too.
Yeah, I think that was urban legend. I don't know. I still don't have a good reason for why we spent $6 trillion and 4,000 dead Americans and all those arms and legs lost for that war. There's no good, because there's no way he was a threat to America. And Condoleezza Rice, where there's mushroom cloud talk, and even Colin Powell going to the United Nations, it's American tragedy.
So, Governor, what's your favorite color?
I want to say one good thing that I'm proud of, too, is getting the money back from 38 studios. I talked about the Iraq War vote, but also getting that $65 million back through my lawsuit. Back to the Rhode Island taxpayer. That was my lawsuit that did that.
And they didn't want to cover that.
Right. And they couldn't give me two good words of praise for that. But my favorite color, blues and greens.
All right. And who's your favorite historical figure?
I like the Roosevelts, FDR and TR, through American history. Of course, in the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln, who I'm named for, and General Grant, who then became president. These are some of my favorite presidents.
All right. And if you had to make a prediction, a bet, I guess, would you say that Donald Trump is going to win the 2020 election or no? As of now.
Depends on who the Democrats nominate, and they have a skill at shooting themselves in the foot. They're good at that.
That's true. That's true. And last question: who do you think do you think the Democrats will nominate? Do you have any person that you think, like, after watching the first debate? I know they have quite a few more debates, and there's a lot of primaries and caucuses to go. But do you have any picks so far of who you think? A couple of people, maybe, or.
When they were asking some of these really left-wing questions to raise the hand, everybody in the stage to raise their hand, seeing Biden put his hand up kind of half-heartedly, he's thinking, if I win the primary, I've got to go in as a general election candidate, and this is going to be used against me. The Republicans are filming this. You can promise that. And kind of like Romney running in the Republican primary, he said, after the primaries are over, we take the Etch-a-Sketch and shake it up. And said, never mind all that stuff we said in the primary. So that's a problem for the Democrats, is getting pulled too far out on the extreme left edges. I think Bernie Sanders would have been a good candidate in 2016 because he was the outsider, and that's what Americans wanted. In 2016, that's how Trump won. He was the outsider. So I'm wondering if that's going to be true in 2020.
I do worry about, and I'll leave you with this, I do worry about the Democrats picking somebody for identity politics. And as we talked about, Trump just playing off that. And he has a loyal base that they're going to come out, rain, shine, hurricane,
Yes.
thunderstorm, whatever.
You got that right. You got that right. His base will be there.
All right,
as he showed his announcement in Florida.
Yeah, I actually saw that, and I was down in that area, and there was people everywhere. There was people outside. It was a full house, over 20,000 inside. So, they're motivated. I don't think the Democratic candidate, unless it's a person that's progressive and can really get young people out, such as Bernie. I don't really see any other person that can really get young people out besides Bernie, motivated to vote. He's got that loyal base like Trump, and I know I'm a little biased because I like him, but he's the one that's got that that young people out. He can get them out to vote. I don't see anybody else.
You're not Warren?
Yeah, maybe, Warren, but I do think that Bernie's got that following, like you said, from 2016, that they're loyal. And they even say Bernie or bust. I know that majority of Bernie Sanders supporters did vote for Hillary Clinton. I think there was only like 20 or 10% that voted not at all. Because remember, if you look at it, when Obama went against Hillary, a lot of those people would not vote for Obama because he was black. And more of those people stayed home, the Hillary supporters in that election, than the Bernie supporters did against Trump. So.
But Obama won big.
Yeah, Obama won big because Obama had that following, and he got the young people out. And you, as being a person that was on Obama's 2012 co-chairs, and you were friendly with the president, you've seen that from firsthand. That President Obama had that organizing for America, and he could get the people out to vote for him. And he was an inspiring person, as Bernie is, and he can get those young people out and making speeches. So.
Yeah, Hillary's biggest mistake was not putting Sanders on as VP.
Yeah, but that was an ego thing, Governor. You know that.
Yeah. Though, and she cost her the election. She'd be president. She'd done that.
And Bernie would have pushed her father to the left too as president.
Yeah, which would have been good.
I agreed, but she didn't. Say that again.
Yeah, Bernie voted against the Iraq War.
Right, yeah, no, he did, as in the House. He did do that, so. But, Governor, I appreciate the time as always. You are an American treasure, and I'll say that again. And I really appreciate you as being my senator and also my governor in the state of Rhode Island. And I really hope, whether it's on TV or in a political frame, that you get out there and keep telling your ideas, because you do have great ideas, and you did do a great job in the state of Rhode Island. And we need more people to tell the truth in politics and on the, the TV, wherever it may be, because it's really getting lost, as you said. And Trump may be an idiot, but when he says fake news, a lot of it is. A lot of this Russia stuff, as we talked about earlier in the debate, earlier in the interview, is fake news. and they just make up stuff. They don't give the right people coverage on TV that are telling the truth because they want to play with their storyline. So I appreciate you, Governor.
Well, I appreciate being on your show. You're so knowledgeable, Robert. Read the book Shattered and know right what happened in that 24 hours after Hillary lost. You were right on about that. They said we're going to blame it on the Russians. You're knowledgeable about foreign affairs and
$140 million that in that Uranium One deal, and she didn't believe that anybody was going to find that out. We do have the internet. This isn't the early 1990s when her husband was president, and now we'll end it with this. And now with the Jerry Epstein thing, with President Clinton was involved, and he took 28 trips down to that island. So now, if I'm a Democrat, I do not want any Clinton, whether it's Hillary or Bill, near me for this election, because whether it's Bill with the Epstein thing or Hillary with her disaster in 2016, no thanks. Maybe I'll take Obama, but not Hillary.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure talking with you, Rob. Let's do it again soon.
All right, Governor. Thanks so much. I appreciate you. You have a good rest of your day.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.